absolutely requires a prioritisation across what you do, and it requires the teams coming together. We have an investment process, we have a prioritisation process internally, but also we go out to the nation, and we've been in this process as we look at our 2015 strategy. We have multiple engagement with different stakeholder groups, and we ask the nation, what should Australia be good at? What should we be working on? So we engage right across to answer that question, because in a way we're not just answering it for CSIRO. CSIRO must answer that question as to respond to what the nation needs us to work on. And certainly the message we're getting loud and clear is energy, our energy future. Loud and clear our water resources. Loud and clear the connections between these big issues, preventative health. So a lot of the issues that are coming out are clear. On the other side, CSIRO sometimes has to work on things that the nation doesn't quite know it's ready for yet. And that we actually look internally, and James Moody's here tonight, who's been working through with our scientists on what are the trends that we need to be prepared for. That if we ask the nation, they might not actually give us that answer, but the nation needs to rely on the fact that we do that work and we try and keep ahead of the things that the nation needs to be prepared for. You know, I'll give you an example. If we hadn't invested, for example, in our biosecurity facility in Geelong, our AL facility, Australia would not have been prepared for H1N1. We were the first nation in the world to produce a vaccine. CSL produced the vaccine. CSIRO worked with CSL on the safety side of that and testing the vaccine. We could import the virus into this country before anyone even had H1N1. We imported it from New Zealand into the facility. We worked on the diagnostic kits. That's the preparedness that Australians should simply be able to go to sleep at night knowing that it's there. But you do have to think ahead. So Michael, it's a two-way thing. It's listening to the demands and needs and requirements of the nation and thinking about ahead of what we should also have a prepared capacity for.
Now, what's really interesting, Megan, is that when I've read through all of these questions, there's a very strong theme of pessimism about government's abilities to think long-term, to plan long-term, to invest long-term. So I'm going to try and summarise some of these questions. One person has simply answered, why can't the market support all of this innovation? Why can't the market support CSIRO? The other question that really flows out of it in a lot of these questions is concerning the population debate within Australia. Do you agree with what seems to be the current wisdom among the major political parties that we can't afford a much bigger population, that our land, our water, our carbon emissions can't afford that, too many more Australians?
On the first side, in terms of who should fund this, as I mentioned, we work with the markets in our energy sector, in our minerals down under, flagship. Also in the manufacturing side, future manufacturing. So we have flagships that fully engage with the market and understand that. But if we're to set up long-term understanding of our climate, our partnership with the Bureau, that isn't funded by the markets. When we wake up every morning, we simply expect to know what the weather's going to be like today. We simply expect it. Now, some of those things, I think, do need to be supported by the investment of the taxpayers' dollar, and of course there's prioritisation. So certainly in our climate side of things, I think the preventative health, it is not funded by the existing pharmaceutical or some of the medical industry doesn't fund that. So that's a huge challenge for us. Our biosecurity, I mentioned, Australians need to be able to go to bed at night knowing that that is there, and they would expect, I think, that some element of the taxpayer dollar is there to make sure that preparedness is in place. The one that is really we're struggling with as a nation right now is we know that our biodiversity is very important. We know we're a very biodiverse nation. We know we have unique flora, fauna, microbes even. There is no market yet for biodiversity. We think there will be. And it's an area where we're struggling with all the priority issues that we have as a nation to make sure we even keep that going. So there are areas that are tough for us as a nation to fund. But it is a balance. We work across both of those areas. And we have great engagement with the industry sides, but I don't think you can leave it to one segment or the other. And in fact, no major nation does that. So.
And in terms of our carrying capacity as a nation, water, land.
Well, I can tell you from my perspective, we absolutely need the brightest and best this world has to offer. We need the brightest and best from India, we need the brightest and best from China, we need the brightest and best from Eastern Europe, we need the enthusiasm of the Colombians, the mathematicians from Moscow. So let me speak for my organisation, not for the nation. I absolutely know that we need to encourage those people and the brightest to choose this country in which to live, because if we are going, we're 1.3% of that global investment in R&D, so we've just got to have the best the world can offer, and we've got to be able to attract them. Now, I think we've got lots of things that can attract people, but we need to do a much better job of doing that. We've got strained relations with our students in India, and that's having a severe impact on our university numbers. We simply must be better at extending this hand of friendship, I think, around the world and backing that up. I'm an optimist. In fact, someone said you couldn't do your job if you weren't an optimist, and I think they were actually probably right. I am an optimist, but I do think Australia has sometimes ignored the hand of friendship that's come from other countries. But what we're now seeing is that with science and technology, it's a wonderful bridge that can form a very early foundation and relationship. Scientists are good. They can form very long-term partnerships rather than the changes we see often at the political level. And those foundations can be the wonderful underpinning of both political and international relationships later on. So I think it's beholden on us to form and strengthen those relations. So we're certainly strengthening with China, with India, with Korea. We need to form deeper relationships with those countries.
Well, that in turn begs the question of how sustainable is the CSIRO? How sustainable is science and technology in this country? Are students, are school kids studying science in the same numbers that we need? Are they interested in studying at university in the same numbers that we need? What's the situation on the education front?
Well, let me answer the first bit first in terms of sustainable. CSIRO, the government has promised in the pre-election commitment a secure 4-year funding for CSIRO. We come up for 4-year funding. That's a good thing. But sustainable, secure 4-year funding, I think, is very important. And of course, with our costs rising at 3% and a government funding rising at 1.5%, there's a gap in our sustainable funding. Now, we're working hard on our side. We're the largest attractor of external research in the nation, over 420 million, and we've been working actively with the markets. Last year, a 10% increase in that. This year, looking like 11%. So we've been working very hard to make sure we're relevant, but absolutely filling that gap. And in a way, the nation saying that gap should be filled and CSIRO should be supported is certainly a priority of mine at the moment.
Now, one of our guests, I won't name any names, but a former Premier, has asked why, not the one everyone's thinking of, there are 2 former Premiers here, has asked why were you hesitant when you listed Sydney and New South Wales in your list of innovation centres?
Oh, I'll get really bold now. What I was hesitant for is that I think there's an opportunity that New South Wales has, and in fact has had for the last few years, that it hasn't yet taken up. And that is that there is an opportunity with the wonderful talent that we have at NICTA, the wonderful talent that we have in our universities, University of Technology Sydney, University of Sydney, University of